Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, everybody, let's move quickly. Okay, all right. Let's try to whip through this little select group as quickly as possible. 358.
$358. This is a procurement bill. You should have a reprint at your desk as introduced. It required provisions to allow for price adjustments for increases for various unforeseen events. The amendment before you would allow for when there's a substantial increase or decrease. And also it puts a 10% collar on it. So no more than 10% increase, no more than 10% decrease. 358.
8.
These amendments are from the sponsor.
Second. Any thoughts on this? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Okay. But 553.
553. This is the military retirement income bill from the administration. As introduced, the bill would have phased up to a $40,000 subtraction modification and removed the age distinction. The House has actually passed this, so you have the House bill in your possession, and the approach they took was to leave the age distinction and increase for the under 55 to a $12,500 subtraction, and for 55 and over raise it from 15 to 20,000.
Senator, do you have a
Good question. So,
So I'm sorry, I didn't hear you completely. Did they decouple? Did they take the oh, this is a governor's bill. Oh,
It's governor's bill. And then the House bill also starts applying beginning tax year 2023.
Okay. I think for ease of purpose and guarantee we get something done, we should just take the House amendments and roll with it. So moved. All those in favor? Opposed? Let's go to this one that's going to EE. Their EE is primary.
783.
Yeah.
You should have a reprint on your desk. This bill, as introduced, was doing two things. It was establishing a historic properties disposition and preservation team within DHCD. Triple E struck that from the bill, and so the remaining pieces of the bill relate to the catalytic preservation revitalization project tax credit, which I think on page 7 is where you'll see the changes there. The bill as introduced was extending the termination of that program from 2031 to 2035. The current program also had limitations on authorizing credits for one project, and there's some changes there that would allow multiple credits if the project is being done in phases. And then they added a study at the end of the bill. So I think striking the new DHC program should remove that 400 to 500,000 fiscal impact. The remaining fiscal impact isn't
So,
experienced until 2032.
right. So I think we're in effect out of the game on this one. Yes,
I mean, yeah, for the,
Want me to move favorable?
yep,
Move favorable.
second.
as amended by,
Amended by law.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. 826.
So Senate Bill 826 has to do with the homeowner's property tax credit, also known as circuit breaker. So what this bill does is current law, an individual has to apply annually. And there's about 14 different types of income that you have to include in your calculation for eligibility. This one says every 3 years, you would need to do the full-blown application. And in the 2 intervening years, you could do a certification. And this would apply to people whose income is only from Social Security, pension, or an annuity. During the hearing, the question was asked how many recipients would this affect? About 2/3 of the current recipients SDAT estimates would fall under this bill.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Move favorable.
Second. All's in favor? Opposed? Okay. You've got 865.
Yeah, we do that too. You have a reprint somewhere on your desk for 865. Basically, as this came in, it would have set up a couple of additional boards for purposes of the Western Maryland Economic Development program. This strikes those 2 additional boards and instead just kind of restructures the existing board. And you can see it adds various new membership, strikes anything having to do with the 2 boards. On page 4, it deals with some of just position clarifications for the executive director, including salary limitation. And the remaining are really just conforming changes. But it also does specify that this board is the one who makes the decisions on what projects would be approved.
Okay.
Second.
You like that, Bill? You do? It also happens to have the Senator George C. Edwards stamp of approval. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Let's go to 840.
Senate Bill, Senate Bill 840 establishes the Protecting Against Hate Crimes Fund. It's administered by the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention, Youth and Victims. The bill will amend the bill with amendments. If you accept the amendments, will authorize the governor to appropriate, but rather than require him to appropriate the funds. Senator Hester requested to be added on as a co-sponsor of the amendment, and then there was just a clarifying amendment from the sponsor. Currently, there's a grant administered by the governor's office, and this bill will codify that grant. That program currently has $5 million in it, and this additional funding will bring that grant funding up to $10 million.
Move favorable. Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, we had the film tax credit the other day. And I think I miscommunicated a little something, so I want to bring that back. We didn't, I think I missed an amendment that would have limited for 4 years at the new level. That's correct, right?
Yes.
I'd like to add that on. It hasn't gone over the floor yet, so we can do it here.
Okay.
Motion?
Yep.
I move that.
Okay,
Second on that.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The big film tax credit one.
Senate Bill 452.
Do we have anything else we're gonna go around today?
I'm gonna try one more time on this Senator Lamb one, and then we'll be done.
Okay, I still have two bills that I'd really like to get out.
Okay.
We'll talk about it.
Yep. Bill?
$773.
Yeah.
Senate Bill 773. This is the procurement bill related to the liquidated damages clauses. We did receive some amendments from the sponsor. The amendments would so if you go to page 7, the amendments create an exemption for emergency or expedited procurements from needing to get approval from the Board of Public Works if a liquidated damages clause is not included in the contract. And then on page 8, there were some concerns raised in the testimony about having to track all procurements for delays in contract performance. And so this language at the top of page 8 limits that reporting to procurements for services valued at 5 million or more. The amendments do not address the issue raised in the testimony about the question of whether, as opposed to BPW, the primary procurement units should be the ones to develop the model policies. So that's the only thing that's not covered. And then the amendments also do not address the concern about, so on page 7, the bill still has provisions that would require BPW approval of contract that doesn't include liquidated damages clauses. And so there was concern that the inclusion of that provision could create delays in contracting. So one possible alternative you could do is, instead of requiring BPW when liquidated damages are not included, maybe require the primary procurement units to report on the contracts the procurements they do that don't have liquidated damages clauses, and then at least you'll have some information about when it's not being used, as opposed to creating potential for additional delay. It's just an option I thought of.
How are people feeling about this? Is it, I know there's some murky pieces of this. Senator Alfred?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I think this is absolutely needed. Philip, I'm confused by this amendment on page 7. Isn't that wasn't the issue in question that kind of sparked this bill an emergency contract?
I don't believe so. I believe it was the ASO
Okay,
contract.
okay,
I don't think that was an emergency.
okay. We need it. I just don't know if we have the answer yet.
Senator Helen?
Mr. Chairman, is there an issue with having BPW be the entity that develops the model policy?
DGS had submitted testimony saying that the primary procurement units are the ones that best understand the procurements coming from those units, and they may be better able to assess or create the policy for when liquidated damages are appropriate or not. The policy would still need to be done. I think the testimony was suggesting that those primary procurement units may be better informed and you know, they're the ones managing all this, so they may have better information, better insight in terms of, you know, how it's actually used, when it may be appropriate. And
So maybe there's a way for BPW to coordinate those units to make sure, I don't know, I'm a little uncomfortable leaving it to each one. I mean, it seems like there needs to be some oversight of that. And I hear what you're saying. Maybe it is most appropriate, but maybe BPW can have that oversight role in corralling all those different entities to make sure that this happens.
I mean, one option you could do is you could have the units develop the policies
Mhm.
for approval by BPW.
Mhm.
Then they're the ones developing it, and BPW would kind of have the final stamp of approval. That could provide some further consistency or uniformity across the units. Obviously,
Exactly.
what each one does will have nuances and variations in terms of the work and type of procurements, but if there's a more universal
Right.
concept, that could be an option.
I like that idea. I also do think this is really important, especially in light of the major impetus behind it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator?
What is the definition of primary procurement unit?
So it's established in law. So the primary procurement units are State Treasurer's Office, DGS, Department of Transportation, University System of Maryland, Maryland Port Commission, Morgan State University, and St. Mary's College.
I see. Well, I mean, understanding that now, I think the general thrust of what Senator Hedelman's saying is right. I mean, one of the primary functions of the BPW is oversight of procurement. And it seems to me the fact that they're separate from doing the procurement is actually an advantage, not a disadvantage in getting in a broad policy across the government in a situation where we have a problem. So I would be for putting more responsibility on BPW, regardless of how it's structured, and get input from those folks. But BPW, I think, ought to be driving the train.
So if I'm trying to cobble those thoughts together, this idea of requiring the units to develop their policy approved by BPW, does that work with people? Doing that amendment, are we ready to vote on this?
Do you want to do anything? So there's also the other piece on page 7 where there was concerns raised about delay in contracts where if a clause is not included, it requires BPW approval. And those are services valued at 5 million or more. Or where at least 1 million is spent
That would be
in a single year.
They don't have liquidated damages. That a contract would require BPW approval.
The non-inclusion of the liquidated damages clause would need BPW approval. And DGS's
In other words,
testimony,
BPW would have to give an exemption.
yes.
But I think that makes sense.
For things over,
Over five, yeah.
Yeah, DGS raised concern that could delay contracts.
Well,
by
it definitely would delay, but it would also put more teeth into getting liquidated damages. Mr. Chairman,
yes,
I don't feel like I know enough about this
okay.
to make a sensible decision, but
Okay.
if you feel we need to make one, I'll go with the flow.
No, look, I don't think there's a cross on this.
There is not a cross.
And so I was trying to
I got you.
move something. Jackson, Mr. Senator Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quick question, Phil. So if DGS is concerned about a delay, maybe there's I'm not necessarily concerned about it. I think it needs to be right. But maybe the thought of some timing on a response from BPW. And I'm not necessarily concerned about a delay if we're not going to get it right. So, but if that's a concern that you mentioned that DGS had regarding BPW's input, but if you're talking 5 million and up, that's a concern for all of us. Should be a concern for all of us. And if we're looking to satisfy DGS's concern about the delay, I mean, maybe there's something within a time frame, but other than that.
Yeah, there were two pieces. I mean, for the BPW, one was for not including a liquidated damages clause. The other was not pursuing liquidated damages. That one's probably a little bit of a bigger picture question, which to Senator Roosevelt point about BPW kind of managing procurement.
Tell you what, it's 5:11. Let's not make a rush decision. Look, we haven't had this bill for years. So if we have to, we'll try to get it done after crossover, but if not, we'll take a year. It is what it is.
We say in the Senate.
Yes.
I must admit. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I must admit, this is a foreign language here. I'm not so sure that I have my arms wrapped around what this bill is and what it does. So I would think, and I do need to have a conversation with the attorney so that I can get a clearer understanding as to what this bill really does. What does it mean?
Yeah, I mean,
So I'm a little slow this morning when it comes to this bill,
That's okay.
but I'm not slow on most things. So I'm gonna get that straight.
That's for sure. That's for sure.
They don't call me Quick Draw McGraw for nothing.
I think we're all struggling a little bit on this one. So it is now time to go to the floor.
Okay.